maintained by evil people. Do you understand? Nobody has to be desperately poor. Do you know what a huge source of unnecessary human suffering is? By extreme poverty, desperate poverty, destitution. Do you understand this? Understand what it does. Nobody on the whole face of the earth has to go without clean, potable water, without healthy, nutritious food in plenty, without more than adequate housing. Do you understand? Without more than adequate energy needs. That's a matter of fact. Nobody can argue that. That's the truth. And the fact is, the way it would be if God had his way is that there'd be no money. So figure it out. How's that going to work? In the meantime, you want to play the money game, let's talk capitalism. Let's talk about the definition of true capitalism and certain components, elements, ingredients of true capitalism. Things like risk and competition and free market and supply and demand. So you want to play that game, then that game needs to have rules that everybody adheres to. It can't be a rigged game where everybody that wins succeeds in that game says, I'll go along with the rigged game as long as I can win. I don't mind. It's a form of cheating. How can you say it's okay? Yeah, and then you say you're happy because you're successful, worldly wise, secularly speaking. Do you understand what I'm saying here? You can't. You're delusional. So you got to turn to God and say, God, if I am delusional, if I'm self-deceived and my happiness that I believe because of the sense of freedom and I'm out of fear financially and my sense of freedom and security here, okay, is phony, pseudo, and I've been lying to myself. And that really you see in my heart and you see how impure it is that I love money more than I love humanity, more than I love you. God, I recoil. Help me to repent and turn. Help me to purify my heart. And understand this, I'm not sitting here on a high horse. I love money too. Confess it. Admit it. It's the first step of getting it together, man. It's it. And you revere God and say, I don't want to fall into the hands of an angry God. And he is angry. What's he angry about? Unnecessary human suffering. Does it get worse than dubious war? Okay, righteous war. Men will pay to go kick Hitler's butt. Try it and see. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong that a system can't work if God gets his way. And we're born rich and it has nothing to do with money. We're born prosperous. It has nothing to do with money. We're born wealthy and it has nothing to do with money. But rather it has to do with the intrinsic, inherent resources that God put upon the earth, and the greatest one of those resources isn't the gold and the silver and the precious gems and other metals out there, okay, and the oil and the timber and the agricultural land and the fish and on and on and on. Okay, no, it is a willing workforce. It is labor, and they should work on only one term of their own free will and accord. Everything else is slavery. To coerce them and bribe them with money. Do you understand here what's going on? It's a scam from the pit of hell. We have a godly instinct to want to serve one another. It's very unnatural. There's something wrong with somebody that doesn't want to serve. Do you understand? It's a God-given need. An instinct is like a need. If you don't fulfill it, your conscience is going to be quick. It's going to be aching. It's going to be hurting. Okay? You're not going to feel right. And so you're going to be driven to utilize your talents, to be appreciated, and to go out there and show the world what you got. And it's fun. It's like playing. That's it. That's what we're going to do. And it's going to be much better than it is. How can it be not infinitely better? And you know why we found easier and easier methods to produce all the things we want and need? Because we were overburdened before. I mean, we used to take, 1,000 men and ox to plow a field, but now it takes one combine and one farmer, and yet our cost of living, our burden has gone up. Do you see what they've done? And then they'll frame capitalism. They'll say, oh, it's capitalism, so you better become a socialist, and you better take all the money from all those big meanie capitalists out there. And nothing could be further from the truth. We've had nothing but anti-capitalism, the antithesis of true capitalism. That bailout of '08, that's a glaring example of what I'm talking about. Free market? Are you joking me? These people deliberately caused the blowout of the economy, and then they're ones that are going to get bailed out, telling, hey, if you don't do this, it's Armageddon. Okay, it's the end of the world if you don't bail out. These are too big to fail. They can't fail. I mean, if they fail, America fails. Capitalism fails. So this is the pretext, the pretense, the context. You get it? You understand why we had to bail out these criminals so that they could go out and take, rape, pillage, and plunder the American people, the blue-collar working-class people who spent their blood, sweat, and tears, and then they stole their homes right under our noses. We're letting this happen. You think this happened overnight? The analogy of the frogs in the pot of water is excellent for this situation we're in. They plunked us in the pot at the assassination of JFK. That was the most precarious time for these people because that was a money printing coup. JFK was eliminating the Federal Reserve. We didn't need them for bupkis. He had already supplanted the Federal Reserve notes with U.S. Treasury notes known as silver notes, silver certificates. And thank God I'm around to remind the American people of this time in history. As a 5-year-old, I remember the 1 and 5. They looked just about like dollars, a little prettier, a little richer in appearance. And the people were taken to them. We were fine with those notes. So, yeah, we wanted them. We were fine with him getting rid of the Federal. We didn't need them for anything anymore. We had new dollars. And we liked the idea of sound money, sound economic policies, true capitalism. That's capitalism. That's competition. We don't have any competing fiat currency. That's insanity. You know it would drive these people out of business. I mean, back in the 80s, Ronald Reagan was bitching and moaning and freaking out about a $24 billion debt. I saw it, I think it was on the Johnny Carson show, right? And now what is our debt? It's over $20 trillion. I mean, how many times is that? Roughly how many billions of dollars are in a trillion dollars? Okay, 1,000 billion, right? Is that it? I think I got that right. So 999 billion goes from there. It's a trillion. So how many times is that? Let's see. That's in 1 trillion. That is so about 250 times would be 1 trillion, times 10 would be 250. I'm trying to do this math in my head roughly. But let's say the debt was 25 billion back in the 80s. So 100 billion would be 4 times. And 1,000 would be 40 times. And then 10,000 would be 400. So about roughly over 800 times the national debt back in the 80s. Do you understand that? 800 times. So if 25 billion represented 100% of the national debt, we're at 800 times. Wait, no, 800 times. So how many is that? That's it boggles the mind. Okay, it is a huge number. It is a huge number. I'm still a little frustrated because I can't do this math in my head a little better. Okay. But because the numbers are so large, but 100 billion would be 4 times, and that means 1,000 billion would be 40 times, which is a trillion, and 10 trillion would be 400 times, so 800 times what the debt was then. Do you understand? As far as percentages is, I'm not exactly sure, but that's probably about 8,000%. Yeah, maybe 8,000%, I think. Okay, check my math, but I think we're talking about 8,000% more than the debt was just in the 1980s. And people aren't freaking out, and we're creating more multi-billionaires every day. The wealth imbalance keeps growing. Poverty keeps growing. The need for the social welfare state keeps growing. And